Hello, I am Shushai Adane. My guest today is Dr. Haile Abraha, legal expert. Rule of law and its implementation in contemporary Ethiopia is the issue that we are going to discuss in our today's program. Stay with us. First of all, I would like to thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you for having me too.
Okay, just to start with, rule of law is what we always hear from all sorts of governments at all levels. So what is rule of law all about in the first place?
Yeah, thank you. Rule of law is highly related with constitutionalism, democracy, and development. Mm-hmm. You cannot think of constitutionalism, democracy, and development without rule of law. When we see the general purpose of rule of law, its main purpose is to protect the sovereignty of the people, mm-hmm. the sovereignty of the constitution, and to limit the exercise of the government. Mm-hmm. So why limit the exercise of the government? If the power of the government is not limited, then there will be anarchy. There will be monopoly of power. Mm-hmm. So the power of any government should be based on law. Mm-hmm. It has to be free from any kind of arbitrariness. Mm-hmm. It has to be free from wide discretion. It has to be free from ultra-virus or intra-virus. Mm-hmm. So if the government is to rule a country, the ruler of that country has to be the supremacy of the law. Mm-hmm. So the law must govern. The law must govern. The people, the leaders who are there in the state, their main purpose, their main intention, their main goal is to implement the law. So there has to be supremacy of law in that country. Mm-hmm. Without having the supremacy of law, there will be anarchy, there will be an oligarchy, there will be dictatorship and others. So mm-hmm. in order the rule of law to be there also, the laws must be just, fair, open. So they have to be accessible. They have to address the interests of the people, the interests of the society. So if such kind of rule of law exists in one country, then that government will be a responsive government. That government will be a consistent government. That government will be a government of trustworthy government. That government will be a predictable government. That government will be a government which enables the people to live a good life. Mm-hmm. So the good life of the people. Why rule of law? If you take why rule of law, if we ask ourselves why rule, we hear in our today's contemporary world, all governments said we are working for rule of law, we are committed for rule of law, but in reality, you see them displacing the people, killing the people, just people living in poverty, people living with frustration. You see a lot of violence and everything. So the essential purpose of rule of law is the essential purpose of it to enable the people to live a quality life. This has to be underlined. The essential purpose of democracy is not only to have a democratic government, a democratic state, but the people to live in a quality life. The people to have a quality life. The purpose of the Constitution itself is also, it's not only to be written in a paper. The purpose of the Constitution is to change the life of the people, to create a free society, to create a civilized society, well-informed society, wealthy society. This is the main purpose. So for all this also, it gives the rule of law grants the people from any kind of violations, from any kind of government arbitrary arrest and all these things.
So I think Ethiopia doesn't have such a problem of written documents if rule of law is all about what you say. How could you describe the current situation in that regard there?
Yeah, if we see the current situation of Ethiopia, we can see when we see in the omission of rule of law, as what I said before, supremacy of law. What does supremacy of law mean? Currently, this supremacy of law has been developed by so many theoreticians. Say, for example, we can take Tom Bingham, we can take Fuller, we can take Joseph Raz. They have related it with economic development, with social development, with cultural development, with all development of the society. It's not only made to exercise or to work based on the law, because there are different laws. Even you can have laws in the monarchy, you can have laws in the dictatorship, you can have laws in different systems. But do you really work for the independence of the society? Do you really work to free the society from any kind of violence, violations, stress, frustration? Does the society live a peaceful life? Does the society live in a stable life? Does the society live in an economic development of life without any kind of fear, without any kind of frustration, having a full guarantee of his life, property, and all his life, property, and all whatsoever is needed by the society. So when we come to our country, our current situation, it's obvious that we are looking at a lot of displacements, a lot of killings, a lot of arrests, a lot of detentions.
Anyways, let me interrupt you. Is rule of law, from what you said, now being implemented on the ground? For instance, we can take the recent event of the media, which were closed by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Does that indicate? I'm
to come to that. I'm to come to that. So rule of law doesn't mean why I'm talking. The main purpose of rule of law is rule of law doesn't mean detaining people. Rule of law doesn't mean arresting people. Rule of law doesn't mean just throwing people into prison. This is the last resort that you have to take those measures very seriously. This by itself will create another hard criminals, another dissatisfaction. This by itself will be a backfire to the government. This by itself will be this by itself will create another mob that can overthrow the government. A government cannot be a stable government by a democratic government by arresting, detaining, and all those things. But today, what we see in real practice is we see a lot of displacements. Around 3 million people are displaced. We see a lot of arrests. We see a lot of killings without any justification. Say we see the chief staffs and the Amhara regional presidents and others. A lot of killings. So those are very disastrous to the government.
A lot of assassinations.
A lot of assassinations. They are very disastrous. Not only disaster, they show the weakness of the government.
In terms of maintaining rule of law?
Yeah, in terms of maintaining rule of law, in terms of peace and stability, in terms of maintaining the economic development and everything. This frustrates the people. A frustrated society. Now, a stable society cannot be creative, innovative. So, this totally distracts the whole system. This is against the Constitution too. Because the Constitution talks about life, liberty. Protect, first and foremost, the duty of the government is to protect the life and the liberty of the people. Especially the life of the people is a supreme right than any kind of right. Whatsoever the exercise of the government is, at the end of the day, to create or to bring a quality life to the people. So, what the government is doing now is, in general, when we take it, it's very frustrating. It's devastating. Even we take the current practice, blocking media, which is the core right of the people. You cannot block media. Even though it has its own limitations, even though it has its own restrictions. Those restrictions, first of all, before you restrict, there are certain measures that you have to take. The first measure is your restriction reasonable? What does reasonable mean? Reasonable means, is it necessary? Is it currently necessary? Is it proportionate? Is there a law that can enable you to do that? Have you followed the procedure legal procedure to take this kind of restriction? Is it really objective? The government may say that this is made to protect public interest. What does public interest mean? Who evaluates this? Who said this? How do you prove this? Especially when you are to restrict the right of freedom of expression, freedom of speech and expression, you have to be very serious on that. Because the people are being communicated with millions by media. They are being informed. You cannot create an informed citizen by blocking media. You cannot create a global economy by blocking media. You cannot create an innovative, creative generation by blocking media. You cannot bring sustainable development, peace, democracy, which is enshrined in the Constitution, by blocking media. So, this is the worst measure that has been taken by the government. Even, you see, dichotomy between the broadcasting cast and the broadcasting agency and the executive organ or the prime minister. The prime minister. The broadcasting agency is saying that I have taken decision. That's only warning. And the government has said nothing. Why did it close? Why did it block? It doesn't give any kind of reason. So who blocked this, those media? Nobody knows this. Any prime minister, any president doesn't have the right to block the media without a reasonable ground. And this reasonable ground, even which is based on substantive law and which is based on procedural law. And at the end of the day also, this, since it is very serious, always the onus of proof lies upon the government. Especially if the government is to take harsh measure on such issues. It needs also, the government is needed to adduce harsh, cogent evidence to prove. So you cannot just you cannot simply stand up and say, today I have blocked.
Anyways, that's not our main agenda. I raised it just an example.
So it's very disaster, and this has to be revised. Otherwise, it will create another mob. It's a very disaster. You cannot block you cannot zip mouths of the people. They have to air out And again, freedom of expression, by the way. The main purpose of freedom of expression is not to bless the government, to bless all the activities of the government. It is there to criticize. But this criticism has to be based on evidence, based on reality, but it has to be objective. It's not meant to appreciate. It's not meant to appreciate. Why media are there to criticize the part, to show or to dispense all informations to the society. So the Ethiopian government or any kind of government without having media is a crippled government. It's a crippled government. No. So the measure which has been taken, blocking media of the Instagram or the Tigray TV, I don't think it's objective and it's legal. This has to be criticized. Yeah.
Okay. 2+ years ago, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had made a vow in public that no single individual in his tenure as a Prime Minister would be jailed without reasonable suspicion. How is that being implemented on the ground?
Yeah, our procedure said that, and our constitution also said that. There's constitutional guarantee, which cannot be violated without the process of law. But in practice, in our today's practice, what we see is, well, people are being arrested, people are being killed, and again, you see, sometimes what I get amazed is, and I say myself, what the hell are they talking to those people? They try to shift the blame, the sources of all those crises are the such kind of. Where were they? The first duty of the government is, the first duty of the law enforcement organs is to do aggressive prevention before the damage occurs. Where were they? If they know the source, if they know the people, if they know the organizations who are doing that, why don't they take measure beforehand? To whom are they blaming? To the people? Or blaming to their law enforcement organs? To whom the blame goes? After all this destruction, after all this killing, after the country has been disturbed.
But let me interrupt you.
With all this chaos.
Let me interrupt you, sorry. My question is, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, 2+ years ago, he made a promise that no single individual in his government would be arrested without reasonable suspicion. And how is the constitution now?
I'm to come to that. I'm to come to that.
Okay.
You see, reasonable suspicion is a constitutional right. I told you from the very beginning. There is a constitution that has to be respected. But what we see now is not only violating, not only transgressing the presumption of innocence. People are dying with no reason. It's 156 people dying within a day. You see the chief staffs and others being assassinated. You see a lot of people dying. You see a lot of people displaced. But the government is shifting the blame to other institutions, other organs, other parties, or to other people. Then who is to take the blame if the government knows all this beforehand? Why not it take aggressive prevention beforehand? So this shows the failure of the government. You cannot compensate all those people who lose their property, who lose their life and everything. This shows the weakness of the government. The government has to look on itself, inside. I'm unable to rule the government. I'm crippled enough. I don't have the capacity. I'm lacking capacity. So he has to confess. He has to ask excuse to the people, to all the people who are dying, with no reason. With no reason. So presumption of innocence comes, when you are suspected. But people are dying with no suspicion and anything. Innocent people are dying. Mothers are weeping. Those investors are weeping. Many people are weeping. So the government cannot reach. The government cannot protect them. If you don't protect the society, if you don't protect the poor mother, then how could you dream for the long future?
So the government, you are saying the government is acting against the promise he made before?
Yeah, the government is acting, not only acting, the government is eating his promise, not that. The government is eating, not only saying the government is eating, in practice, in real practice, the country has entered in a big devastated environment. So people have lost hope now. People are devastated. So the government is responsible for this. The government is responsible. The government has to take the responsibility. Shifting the blame cannot be a reason, cannot be an excuse. It's what I'm saying.
So the right to be presumed innocent is not now working properly, is not being maintained, yeah?
When you think of, whenever there is rule of law, you can talk about presumption of innocence and of others. You all see the violations of rule of law. When rule of law is violated, when arbitrariness has become the slogan of the day, then how could you talk of our presumption of innocence and others? You cannot talk of this. So, of course, in a government with a rule of law, in a democratic government, you can talk of all those human rights principles, and you think that all those human rights principles could be implemented in the ground. But the institutions and others also, the law enforcement organs, they are not protecting the rights of individuals. The government is not protecting the government. Rather, it's violating.
Why do you think this could happen?
Because, sometimes it comes, all these things comes when the government fails to address its promise one day. The second thing is also when it becomes unable to rule the government with democracy, with rule of law, then it shifts to use force. They take force at the measure, or at the main measure, to make silent the people. But people want to be silent. By taking forces, by taking all those unnecessary measures or illegal acts, rather they are to backfire to the government, and they are to swift the age of the government, the age of its declination, the age of its time. So this is mere the government, the current government It's made the current government, it explicitly shows the weakness of the current government. Yeah.
Abiy Ahmed's leadership has been criticized, criticized, yes, sometimes being accused of identifying people as guilty before a fair trial. How do you, as a lawyer, understand that?
Yeah, this is what I said before. Any person, you have to have a substantive evidence before you make that person, or before you suspect him, before you identify him as the criminal. There has to be a reasonable suspicion. Then after that, after reasonable suspicion, then the next measure is, then you'll arrest him. After you arrest him, police will conduct an investigation. And after police conducts an investigation, the result of the investigation will go to public prosecutor, and the public prosecutor will file a case. Then the court will give its some judgment based on the evidence. Before this, you cannot say you are criminal, you are guilty, you are ill. You don't have the prejudice judgment. This is against the rule of law. Whatsoever the government is saying now, it is propaganda. Ramiso and others also. What they are saying now is, in reality, it's against the rule of law. It's against administrative justice. It's against, it's illegal. What about those people? If those people tomorrow, if those people are found not guilty by the court, who's to compensate them after they have become defamed after all this defamation, after all this slavery? Who's to compensate those people? What kind of compensation is to cure their defamation? After all, the reputation, according to our constitution, article, I think, Article 17, right to liberty. No one shall be deprived of his or her liberty, except on such grounds and in accordance with such procedure as are established by law. There has to be law. There has to be procedure. The law is criminal law, might say. There is a criminal law. Then a criminal procedure law. There are institutions for that, to implement that. So it's only the court who can say that you are criminal or not criminal. You are guilty or not guilty. Before that, anyone is presumed innocent. Presumed innocent. So this is against human rights of the people. This is against the human rights of the institutions are being blamed now by the current government.
I would be very happy if you could come up with such manifestations, just like giving examples or substantiate that, with evidence. Otherwise, it may be a mere accusation.
Say for example, TPLF is being labeled now at the one who's creating all this mess of the current mess
in the country.
With the country. And others also are being blamed on that. So this blaming should be proved by the court. Should be substantiated by court. You cannot blame someone because you hate him, because you don't like him, because he is propagating against you. So because he's fighting for peace, stability, and development of the country. Because he's working to the implementation of the constitution. So rather you love it, rather you just negotiate with him, rather you share ideas, rather you cooperate in the solution of the problem.
So you are telling us there is a kind of arbitrary arrest, right? And people are being identified guilty by the government, which is against the law. That's what you are telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, so having taken all what you said so far up to now into account, how do you describe the independence of the judiciary system today?
To check and to create a balance on the part of the executive. And again, it's based on separation of power when you talk about independence of the judiciary, because as Lord Acton says, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, especially in a parliamentary system where we are following now, where the executive and the parliament are fused, there has to be a strong judiciary to make a balance, to check and balance, to control all the evil, all the arbitrary works and all the maladministration of the government, all ultra-vires and intra-vires of the government, which is being done by the government. So because the government is expected, especially the executive with full power, with military, with finance, and everything. So at last, at the end of the day, the guarantee of the society is strong judiciary. But this strong judiciary to be independent, it has to insulate itself from external and internal influence. But we can see what we see is separation of power, the real separation of power in this current situation. I don't think it's properly working as what it's expected. You see certain mix of power. You see usurpation of the power of the judiciary by the executive, and you see sometimes also the parliament not protecting the judiciary. So in such kind of situation, the judiciary has to be very vigilant to when whatsoever case comes to the judiciary, to render fair and just judgment without any kind of external or internal influence. And it has to remain impartial, not only remain impartial, it has to seem also impartial. This is what you can say about the independence of the judiciary.
What happened to the parliament? Because you said it's paralyzed, it's not in a status that enables it protects the independence of the judiciary system, right? Why do you think the parliament is paralyzed? To the extent of not being able to protect the independence of the judiciary system?
You can also say it's highly paralyzed. That's a bit premature evaluation.
Okay, sorry.
That's premature evaluation. But what I see is, you see certain delays. Say, for example, the issue of the Chief Justice. The issue of the Chief Justice, in my understanding, it has been delayed. So the judiciary, in such kind of situation, the judiciary has to decide case with no delay. Because delaying of justice is denying of justice, or sometimes also delaying of justice is denying of justice. So you don't see such kind of decisions when society is in need, when society is eager to know the guilty, the person who is guilty of that, or to know who just when there are a lot of here in the a lot of here in the messages and cases, a lot of whispers, a lot of gossips. So to make free the society from all those gossips and from all those hostilities. So the judiciary, being impartial, has to be very speedy. Its decision has to be speedy, so that relieve the people from all such kind of things. But you don't see such kind of things in the judiciary.
What do you recommend as a solution for the current crisis in the country from legal perspective?
Yeah, the solution for this country is one and one. Election. As election. Election has to be conducted very early. Very early.
Okay.
Very early. Within the framework of the Constitution. Within the framework of the within the spirit of the Constitution.
So within the coming 2 or 1 month?
No, within the spirit of the Constitution. I say within the spirit of the within the spirit of the Constitution. Within the spirit of the Constitution. Election is only word. Nothing. That's a peaceful way of transferring power. Let the people decide. And again, the second point is the current government, it should not be that much hasty to take unnecessary measures.
Like? What do you
like, for example, mass arrests, killings, all those things, detentions, and others. It has to be able to protect whoever he is. He might have certain hatred, he might have certain hostilities with certain parts with others. But he has to keep the peace and stability of the society. Should not take such kind of harsh measures, illegal measures. He has to use his institutions, which are the state institutions. Say, for example, we have seen the blocking of media with no justification. It's not a wise measure. Small wise measure. Especially the measures that are being taken to Tigray. He has to revise them. He has to consider them again.
What measures are you talking about?
Aside for blocking the media,
not only, that's not only for Tigray.
Blackmailing, and unnecessary words and those hostile words and unnecessary things. The Tigray people has paid a lot of sacrifices. Even though it is not a media where just to block it very easily. No, it has its own history. So he has to be very conscious about all his measures. He should not, as much as possible, till the election, till the election comes, and until the election comes and things are being decided, then he has to be very serious in those measures that he is taking without any kind of ground, without any ground. He has to try to have smooth relation, cooperative relation, friendly relation. He has to be able to stand all the parties and all these people to talk about their country, to talk about their society, to talk about their integrity, not about the disintegration, not about hostility, not about killings, not about others. By now people are frustrated. People don't know what will happen tomorrow. There is high economic crisis in this country. So he cannot bring change having such kind of society with all violations of the human rights. So especially, human life is the supreme right of the people. He has to work day and night. He has to do vigilant and aggressive prevention and protecting the country and society. This is what I want to say.
Thank you very much indeed once again for being the guest of this program.
Thank you too.